Hi everyone, my name is Mickey, and so far on this channel we've talked about long-term international travel and long-term travel in general. And today I just want to sit down and talk a little bit about how my husband and I came to this decision to take what some call an adult gap year or sabbatical or a mini retirement. There's a lot of names for it, and I suppose they probably all have slightly different definitions, but I think you get the idea. A set amount of time off to pursue something other than a career. So just to give a little background, I grew up in the US, and as is usual in the US culture, I worked very hard in high school, wanted to get these good grades, get into a good college, and I did. I got accepted into a military academy, and so I think I got a whopping 2 weeks off between high school graduation and when I had to show up for basic training. And so then the next 4 years through that college time, I worked incredibly hard. We're talking 4 hours of sleep or less a night, working through the summers, go all the time, right? Grades, athletics, all the normal things. So no gap year at any point in there, and that's pretty standard for the US culture. So I did, though, have a unique opportunity between my college graduation and when I had to show up for my first job to have 60 days off. And during this time, my husband and I got married, and then we went on this epic 6-week honeymoon to Africa. We felt like it was very expensive to get to Africa, but once you were there, it was lower cost to be in country, or we went to 5 countries then. And so we wanted to make it count. And so we stayed for almost 6 weeks, and we did an overland camping tour. We did a mixture of camping, safaris, climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. It was amazing. And on our overland tour, we were in a group of young adults, and almost everyone else in the group was Australian. We were actually the only Americans. There was one other British dude, but everyone else was Australian. And it really opened up our eyes to how the rest of the world, or other Western worlds, I should say, it's ironic, I guess. Australia is not in the West, but you get what I'm trying to say. View retirement, because all of the Aussies got a standard 5 weeks vacation time off. And some of them, there was a prison guard, and she got 11 weeks off a year. And so it just really opened our eyes, because in the US, you're lucky to get 2 weeks of vacation a year. It was like, what is going on? Like, we thought this 60 days off was the best we were ever going to get in our life. And we were trying to make the most of it, and we did. We loved every minute. So that just kind of started opening our eyes to like, there's like maybe another way out there. So fast forward, arrive at my first job, and I had a 5-year contract. We were on the East Coast in Delaware, and it turns out I loved my job. I loved it then, I love it now. I'm still a hospital administrator by trade, and I loved it. I loved working in the hospital. I loved trying to do the right thing for the patients, and there was this data analytics side of it, which I really like as well. So I actually liked my job, but it was incredibly stressful, and we lived very far from our families. My husband's family's in Texas, mine's up in northern Minnesota, and so we were 1,800 miles from both, a long flight either way, and so we were getting to see family just a few times a year, and the job was really stressful, fun, and meaningful, rewarding, but stressful. So during this first 5 years, I read 2 books that really started spinning the wheels a little bit more on this and making it feel like it could be a reality for me. The first one is more well-known. It's called The 4-Hour Workweek. You may have already heard of it. If not, I would highly suggest it. I'll leave some links where you can buy it below, or you can listen to it on Audible, which is great. Or if you don't want to pay for either of those options, I would check out your local library. That's a great way to do it. And some libraries have free audiobooks too, through the Libby app. So check that out if you don't want to pay for it, or pay for it and highlight it and tab it, because this is a book I've come back to a lot. So there's options there. But in the 4-Hour Workweek, Tim Ferriss talks about the traditional idea of retirement, especially in the West, and how we work, put our nose to the grindstone for 40 years and then look up, and then we sit back and kick it, right, from 65 plus. And to be honest, for me, sipping coffee in a 55 plus home community from 65 to the end of my life didn't really sound appealing anyway. And so instead, he talks about taking that time that would be at the end of your life and breaking it up into smaller chunks scattered throughout your younger years. And so this started really getting the gears turning too. It's like, you don't have to retire and be done forever. You can take time off and then come back to your career, or another way of making money. So that was one of the really influential books. And the second is much older. I think at this point it's probably over 30 years old. In a lot of places, I read this book for free through my local library. I was actually trying to find a link for this video, and it's so old I couldn't find it to like purchase on like Amazon or anything, so you might just have to check out your local library, or I think I even found some free manuscripts online, so just Google it. But it's called The Retirement Myth. And this book was written in a time when traditional pension systems were coming down. And the author does a great job of outlining all of the data behind the finances, and just the sheer numbers, population, things like that, about how the traditional Western model of late life retirement is just unsustainable. And I'm a big data person. I think I mentioned that earlier. And so this really connected to me kind of on that left side of the brain, analytical side of the brain. So that was the other book that kind of really opened my eyes. And then simultaneously, I watched a TED Talk about an individual. Actually, I think she was from Australia. It's been a long time, so I'll link the original TED Talk so you can just go check it out yourself, because I'm just kind of going off of memory here. And she had some health challenges, which is what sparked her to take her kind of adult gap year or mini retirement. And in that, she talks about the origins of the traditional Western late life model of retirement. And in there, she talks about how in Prussia, I think it was in the 1700s, maybe early 1800s, you can watch the TED Talk to see her exact graphs and everything. It was kind of when socialism was taking over, socialist ideas were taking over in Prussia, and they needed people to work more hours in the day, more days in the week, and more weeks out of the year. And they did this and encouraged the population to do this by promising them that at a certain age, I believe it was 70, they could just stop working, right? But especially back then, the average lifespan wasn't all that long. So how much life and enjoyment could you get out of life after you turn 70? I'm not sure. Maybe some people did, but it was, for the first time, it was like, no, we're gonna work, we're gonna front load our lives with all of this hard work, and then we're gonna kind of kick back and relax. And before that, there was this more balanced idea of time off and working all the way through your life. And so that kind of opened my eyes a lot. She showed some really cool graphs, so I would check that out as well. She has a really cool story. And so that those were all the things that planted the idea, in my brain. And I was talking with my husband, and we were ruminating over everything years before we ever made a move to take an adult gap year, a sabbatical, right? Because it's hard. It's hard in the US, it's hard in Canada, other Western countries, Europe probably even, to say, I'm going to take some time off of my career. Like, that's a big move. It's scary. And so that brings me to what actually was the catalyst to pull the trigger and make this reality. So I've been working for 5 years in my corporate job and liking it, being stressed out, but liking it. And sometimes even loving it. And then in August of 2018, my life was turned upside down. My dad passed away. He was what we thought a perfectly healthy 55-year-old man. And I just got a call one Sunday night that he had literally fallen over dead. And I don't want to get into all that here, but my world came crashing down. Obviously, I had some regrets about how much time I had spent with my family, not because I don't like them, I love my family, but because we had lived so far away from them for so long, for careers, and just didn't have the flexibility or the time off with those 2 weeks a year to go back and see them. And so I had some regrets, and then it also started me thinking, like, you can work your whole life for the promise of Social Security or a pension or to live off of your dividends from your stocks or whatever, and you might not see a day of retirement. And so my dad died at the end of August, and by the beginning of September, because of all of these ideas we had already kind of set the groundwork for before this, we had bought an RV and moved out of our house with the goal of saving a ton of money so that 11 months later we could leave. We could leave our corporate jobs. And so we put in our paperwork through our companies. The institution I work for had a really cool program where you could take time off and come back to your job after, which is unique, and I'm going to talk about that probably in some other videos. But it's worth exploring with your own company, because oftentimes companies want to retain you, and the skills that the training they've given you, the skills they've given you, the company, you're an asset. If you're a good employee, it's worth an ask. So anyway, we had, within a week, I think, 2 weeks, we had put in our paperwork, and by the end of September, we had bought and renovated an RV, moved out of our home, and we're on our way to saving this large chunk of money so we could leave the following July. And we were able to do that. At the end of July, a year later, we left for our sabbatical year, our gap year, our mini retirement. And so that brings me to my next point, which is that I'm going to kick off a mini series on the finances of adult gap years, mini retirement sabbaticals, because I think finances are probably what holds people back the most, right? It was for us, and it took something drastic to get us to kind of pull the trigger, even though it was something we had wanted to do. It took something drastic, and I just hope that for someone else, it doesn't take something as drastic or heartbreaking to realize that your life is short and it's precious, and you have to make the most of it. And looking back now, taking our mini retirement was one of the best decisions we ever made as a family. That was before we had kids. Now we have children, and they're incredible, and we can enjoy them without like, they're holding us back, which I don't think that's ever true, by the way. But there's nothing like that. And I'm glad we took it when we did, because we actually only got about 10 months of our year of travel in, a little bit more than 9 before COVID shut the world down. And we came back and got to travel the US for the rest of our time, which was really fun too, to explore our own country in ways we hadn't before. But here we are years later, 2.5 years later, and international travel is not just wide open and readily available even now. And so we're just so glad that we made the move when we did. And it might not even be travel for you. Maybe it's just spending time with family, starting your own business. There's a lot of things you can do with time off of a career, right? It comes down to time freedom. And Tim Ferriss talks about this in the 4-Hour Work Week, and that TED Talk, she talks about this a lot too. For us, it boiled down to time freedom and location freedom. And those two things are what we value above all, because we value time with each other, with our families, and doing, for us, being able to do faith-based things. We did some missions work on our year off, and we're just so grateful, because time freedom is the greatest gift in this life. So that's our story. I hope you look forward to the mini financial series, or the finances of taking a mini retirement. I think I'm going to make it a 3-part series, and the first little mini episode is going to be about how much it costs us to take our mini retirement year. Yes, it's focused on travel, but it's just going to give people an idea of how much it might cost to do some of this. So anyway, stay tuned for that. I hope this story has encouraged you, made you think about some things. Go check out those books, check out that TED Talk, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.